cockroach tormented me by living inside my skull. I had just moved into a newly constructed home in Corpus Christi, Texas. It was a military move, so all my belongings had been packed by a contract mover and trucked from my previous duty station in Florida. The contractors did a full unpack, which basically means they dump everything out of boxes and take the wrapping paper and boxes with them. All of my wardrobe, bed linen, towels, etc. were in huge piles everywhere. I'm an obsessive neat freak, so even one day with my home in disarray was really getting to me. After an entire day of moving, unpacking, and trying to organize, my husband and I were beat. We decided to fall asleep and start again the following day. Sometime around midnight, I woke up with a headache and pain in my ear. My husband was still a little drowsy, as I woke him up and asked if he would take a look at it. He first tried to look in my ear with the lights off, and I got annoyed. I told him to get up and turn on the light. He flipped the light on and started looking in my ear. "Can you see anything?" I asked. "There's a spider in your ear," he answered calmly. "What? Ha ha, yeah right, seriously, do I have an ear infection or something?" He simply repeated himself, "You have a spider in your ear." "What, seriously? You have a spider in your ear?" At this point, I become more aware of the pain, pressure, and fullness in my ear. "Get it out." "Oh my god." My husband runs to the bathroom and grabs a Q-tip. He sits down and proceeds to poke at my ear. This is where everything goes awry. That thing started wiggling to get deeper into my ear. I hear a loud, whoosh 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 sound and the pain increases tenfold. I'm now utterly panicked and crippled with pain. The angry ear invader stops scratching, and I tell my husband to get tweezers, and I curl into the fetal position on the bed. He comes back and starts his extraction. He reaches in, and I feel the bug start to get very active, and then suddenly starts clawing deeper into my ear like an angry hell beast. "I pulled off its leg," he says, coolly. At least, I think that's what he said. I'm deafened by the sound of this horrifying creature now tearing its way into the deepest recesses of my inner ear, crippled by the pain inside my head. Over my own screaming and crying, I look down at the disembodied leg. It's not a spider leg, it's a cockroach leg. Anyone from the south knows about palmetto bugs, which is really just a fancy name for giant, fear-inducing cockroaches that fly. I have a meltdown. A cockroach is a million times worse than a spider. I jump up and run to the bathroom, screaming and slamming my hand onto my other ear, trying to shake it out. My husband pushes me over to the sink and shoves my head under the faucet, trying to flush it out, but every millimeter of space in my ear is full of horrific cockroach. For some reason, he pulls my pajama top off. I still ask him why, but he doesn't know. I finally tell my husband to call 911, and on the phone, he's starting to get a little panicked. I hear him tell the operator about 4 times that my wife has a bumblebee in her ear. I kept being annoyed that he said bumblebee, because A, it was a Chernobyl mutant super cockroach, and B, bumblebee in her ear sounds super idiotic. The medics arrived and started asking me stupid questions and acting like the whole ordeal is no biggie. They shine a light into my ear to make it run out. This does nothing. Every few seconds, I feel it clawing and biting and scratching deep in my ear, deafening me and causing inescapable pain. The medics tell my husband to take me to the emergency room, or just wait it out. I immediately toss my stuff in the car and we drive all the way across town to a ghetto emergency room. The mutant cockroach is still trying to exact revenge for losing his leg. When the doctor finally gets into my room, he explains he's brand new. He's visibly shaken up by the roach ear situation, and has his nurse put some solution in that is supposed to end it and numb my ear. It didn't work because the bug had sealed my ear completely shut. Doogie starts digging at my ear with forceps, and the roach goes insane, making a last-ditch effort to destroy me as it is getting dismembered. The nurse, my husband, and the doctor all have a horrified look on their face, as he rips tiny pieces of bug out and places them on the operating paper. Bits of leg and wing are scattered all over it. The doctor loses his head over the bug graveyard, and suggests that the nurse just sedate me, and that I go to an ENT the next day. I'm in no place to disagree, and despite the huge amount of pain, the bug is dead and no longer clawing. The doctor places cotton over my ear. For what? The nurse loads me up with something that makes me not give a damn. I go home and cannot sleep, even with the tranquilizer they shot me full of. My mind is racing, thinking about the partial roach languishing in my sinus cavity. The second the ENT opened that morning, I was there. Feeling him pull that thing out was the single most satisfying and horrifying moment of my life. He removed the remnants in nearly one piece, much more skillfully than the ER newbie. The ENT said it was the largest insect he had ever seen in an ear. The roach was about 2 inches long and wide. It had destroyed my tympanic membrane and broke the bones in my ear. It's been a while, but I still have problems with that ear. I also still sleep with earplugs. Business owners, what's the dumbest reason someone was fired? I've told this story before, but it sticks with me. Years ago, like in the 90s, my husband worked for a small company. He did a little bit of everything, and one of his jobs, along with a coworker, was keeping all the computers running. Now this was a sales-based company, so all of the salespeople had laptops for themselves. If there was an issue or problem, they'd bring them in to be looked at. So, one day, one of the non-local sales guys was in for a meeting. He said, "Hey, my computer is running really slowly. Can you take a look at it?" My husband says, "Yeah, sure, no problem." Sales guy leaves the computer and goes to whatever meeting he was off to. My husband and his colleague took a look and saw that the disk was nearly full and figured that was slowing things down. They dig deeper and see the computer is filled with adult films, filled with it. Films of all sorts, nothing illegal per se, but very close to it. Now, mind you, The salespeople signed an agreement that their assigned computer was for business use only, not personal use. So, we have a slight problem here. My husband and his colleague, not wanting to make a mountain out of a molehill and not wanting the guy to lose his job over a fixable problem, just wiped the drive clean, reformatted it, got things set up again, and the computer was working great. The guy comes back the next day and my husband goes, "Hey, sales guy, we took a look at your computer. It was running slowly because the disk was nearly full with personal files, so we wiped it clean, reformatted things, and you're good to go." Just a reminder that our company issued computers are for business use only. If you're looking for something for personal use, here are some relatively inexpensive laptops with a lot of storage space. You can put whatever you want on it. Small investment for privacy, And with that, they gave him a printout list of some good, reasonably priced laptops he could purchase for himself. The sales guy just kind of mumbled something, grabbed his computer and was on his way without so much as a thank you. Well, the guys figured that was that, but guess who was back 6 weeks later with a not working at all computer? Yep, dummy. Problem? Yep. The computer was again filled with adult films. They were done at this point. The two of them went straight to the president's office, showed her what was on the computer, well enough to give her an idea, and explained what had happened previously. She was a very no-nonsense lady, so needless to say by 3 p.m. that afternoon, that sales guy was no longer employed. What an idiot. Doctors, what was the worst reaction that you have ever gotten from telling someone their loved one will die? Jesus convincing a family to put their father down is wild to see. I was a second-year resident in family medicine doing an ICU rotation in a pretty big city downtown major hospital. One night we admitted a guy with sickle cell who developed acute chest syndrome and decompensated quickly. That night we worked to stabilize him and he held on. I told the family, if his lungs hold up there's a chance he could do okay. I went home post-call and came back to him in multisystem failure, lungs giving out with essentially nothing left to do. The attendings loved to have us Navy family med docs do the talk with families, we must have been good at it. Since I knew the family already they were ecstatic to have me back and said you're up. I took a second-year medicine resident with me to get a feel for the process, and the attending took us to the family room to talk. There were about 20 to 30 family members there, all ages and types. The POA was his daughter who didn't know him too well but was the closest relative as parents and wife had already passed. I started to tell them the news. That thing I had mentioned about the lungs holding out, well unfortunately they aren't anymore, and nothing else is either. The 4 medicines to keep his heart pumping won't work much longer, we need to talk about what to do. They said, pull the plug? And I said, yes, maybe. The handful of young girls that weren't the POA all started crying, one actually took off running and screaming down the hall. The men in their teens and 20s started swearing under their breath and congregated in the corner, staring daggers at me and I'm sure planning on how to make sure the same thing happened to me as their family member. I'm guessing around then the other resident and attending sunk into the room, kind of like Homer through the shrub, because I was by myself for the rest of the event. I tried getting the daughter to make a decision, but she couldn't. So she kicked me over to one of his cousins. The middle-aged folk were arguing, each with their own opinion and knowing everyone else was wrong. No one could agree, except that I was wrong and I didn't know what I was talking about and I lied to them the other night. They eventually punted to the next generation. His aunt was there with a few older folks sitting in a corner. She was far more reserved and realized the situation and came to terms with it pretty quickly. She thought it was best not to let him suffer, so tried convincing the daughter to sign the paper. But the daughter couldn't bring herself to do it and started crying. After a few minutes more chatting, crying and arguing, another guy I had not seen yet started proselytizing. I just had a talk with my brother Ben the other day about this exact thing. He knew he was in bad shape, and soon he would get to go back to Jesus. It was apparently the family's pastor, and he started preaching. With each sentence, another person joined the circle around me, the POA and the preacher, until everyone was back. With each mention of Ben and Jesus, there was another amen. Or hallelujah, until everyone was yelling the joys of God. Finally, the daughter said yes, let's do it, to a resounding praise Jesus. We signed the papers after about 15 minutes of all this. I found the other 2 docs in the corner, the other resident bug-eyed and quiet. In the hall, the intensive care attending of over 12 years said, well, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen.